Chris Hilton Jr. could turn Death Valley into a track meet, and Clemson's corners must be ready. We'll talk about it right here on Locked on Clemson.
You are Locked on Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked on Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked on Clemson your first listen every day. You know, we're part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're new to the show, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're an everydayer, you know how we do it here on Locked On. Exclusive Clemson content Monday through Friday, every single week. And you haven't been skipping a beat here in the off season of college football as we ramp up everything. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. And outside the show, you can always follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show, where we can talk about anything and everything you want when it comes to the Clemson Tigers. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's Game Time, so check them out. I know I have recently had a very successful podcast last Friday. I talked about LSU speed because as I was previewing LSU, we were going into the running backs, and I was concerned about the running back group. And then the LSU fans reminded me so graciously that maybe it's not the running back group that I should be worried about. Maybe it is the wide receiver group. And so then on Friday, I did a review of kind of the LSU wide receiver group and what we should expect. And really, there was one guy that a lot of the LSU fans reminded me, hey, Morgan, you need to really check this guy out because you skipped him, and he's probably the fastest guy on the team. And I don't know how I skipped him, but I will say we're going to look at him now, and that is Chris Hilton Jr. And again, he is a big time track star. 4.31 second 40, most dangerous guy, one of the most dangerous guys on that LSU offense for sure. Now, the reason why I might have missed him is because, you know, he was kind of out. He has been dealing with some injuries. And so this year, if he is healthy, he could be a huge impact player for LSU. And the more we go down through it, the more it kind of makes you nervous as a Clemson fan of just how many weapons they have, how many home run hitting weapons that they have from running back room to wide receivers. And Chris Hilton Jr. is just another one of those guys. He has just amazing speed, raw burst, forces defense to respect, you know, really every part of his game. But the big part of his game really to me is that deep ball. On every snap, you have to be worried about what he is going to do, how far he's going to get down the field. He's going to stretch the safeties. He's going to open up running lanes because of stretching the defense deep. If you weren't already kind of concerned about Clemson's safeties going into 2025, this is another one of those guys that could add to that concern for you and me about how Clemson is going to adjust to LSU's just massive attack. They've gone into the transfer portal. They've got guys that are super fast and athletic. They have the talent. They're eat up with talent, as my grandma would say. They're eat up with talent, and they will destroy you if you let them. So Clemson's corners and Clemson's safeties, they cannot afford to take any false steps against that kind of speed and acceleration. One mistimed step, one mistimed jam, and it'll be 6 points on the board for LSU. I guarantee you that, because this is how electric this offense is and how dangerous it could be going into 2025 for LSU. Now, Clemson has the talent, I believe, to match up with most anybody on the football field. But we do have to think about where are Clemson's biggest concerns on the defense, and the concerns are there in the secondary and in the safety position, so out deep. Now, Chris Hilton Jr. enters in this season again fully healthy, what we assume after missing 7 games in 2024. But, one of the biggest things that I noticed, now he had 9 catches for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is very good for someone who didn't play a lot of games and was dealing with all those injuries. But a 27 yards per catch, that shows you just how electric he can be. 27 yards. Okay. He is chewing up a big chunk of field when he gets the ball. So to me, that shows somebody that's very electric, very efficient, and a big time deep threat. Now, he doesn't really need the volume to be able to get wide open and to make catches. Coming from Zachary High School, they are known as a track powerhouse. One of the better 100-meter, guys when he was in high school in Baton Rouge. So pair that with what we talked about Friday and the running backs. I mean, this team definitely seems to have one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver group in the country. Clemson will win this matchup, but it has to treat Chris Hilton Jr. with respect of an Olympic sprinter. He is not your typical college wide receiver. You have to be very careful with how you press him on the line, and you have to be very careful with your steps. Again, if you make false moves or if you take too long to get set, or you're not going to be able to run stride for this guy, and you're not going to be able to catch up with him if you make a false move, right? So press him at the line, make him uncomfortable, be extremely aggressive. I think you're going to have to bracket him when he's on the field. You're going to have safety help, and I know that's going to be a concern for the run game at that point. And again, opening up those lanes because you're having to bracket that guy. But those are the things that I'm thinking that you would have to do. And you're going to have to allow someone else to be the explosive play person, because Hilton could destroy you by himself. Now, the problem is they have other guys that could also fit that mold as well. We talked about Trey'Dez Green. Honestly, the biggest concern I would have is if you bracket Hilton and then you leave Green wide open, you basically hurt yourself trying to play one side, because the other side is going to kill you and open up. I don't know how soft you want to play. In my opinion, I'm more of a guy who prefers aggression on defense. I think Clemson needs to still play up strong, still be aggressive, try to get him off of his pace and get him off of his count. Disrupt him at the line of scrimmage so that he and Garrett Nussmeier aren't on the same page in their timing, because his raw speed is going to blow by you. If you give him a soft cushion, if you allow him to just free release, I think he's going to eat you up with deep balls. And Garrett Nussmeier, if he has that protection, I think that's going to be really big. To me, I think you have Avion Terrell, press him, and then you bracket him. I think you have someone like a Khalil Barnes come in. Maybe Tom Allen uses Khalil Barnes, because Khalil has been really good at disguising what he's going to do and getting high interception production for the Clemson Tigers. So he's a guy who can confuse Nussmeier with his coverages while you're bracketing Chris Hilton Jr. So that would be me. But really, I guess kind of the biggest thing is to stick to your strengths. Your strengths are your strengths, and you just got to get to the quarterback. You've got to get into the backfield as quick as possible. Peter Woods, TJ Parker will help. Devontae Capehart must collapse the pocket under 3 seconds. I would say under 2.5 seconds. They cannot allow Hilton to get 20, 30 yards down the field. I mean, I don't know many guys that will be able to catch him. You get 40 yards down the field, it's going to be even worse, especially if you get Nussmeier time to load up and do a, have his and plan off of his back foot. Shorten the ability for the quarterback to launch properly disrupt the angles from the outside against Hilton. And that to me, and stack vertically, that to me is the biggest thing there. Now, again, I'm already being the devil's advocate for myself because I'm thinking about doing all this and you're leaving Trey'Dez Green wide open. That's my biggest fear. And I don't really know if there's a way around it because, as I've mentioned to you, you kind of have to just choose with this LSU offense, who are you going to let win? And maybe you just let the running game thrive and shut down the passing game. I don't know. To me, I would probably, as I said that out loud, probably not do that. But you cannot allow explosive plays like this guy to flip the field, to silence the crowd. There's going to be a lot of LSU fans, I know, in Death Valley and Clemson. So you could ignite their fan base. You do not want the visiting team to take over your stadium. Tom Allen's philosophy about being aggressive, removing the biggest priorities and the biggest threats early in the game, to me, will be what you need to do. And Hilton is that guy. Even though he may not be a starter, he is that type of guy that you have to neutralize. It doesn't guarantee victory, but I think not allowing a 60-yard touchdown strike or even a field position changing play like that can take away the percentage of defeat, if you will. So you have to play your risk. You have to look at your risk management and figure out what in the world you're going to do to avoid the worst possible scenarios. Win the snap, press off the line, own the leverage, get into the backfield, and don't allow Hilton or Nussmeier the time to set up a play to go deep. That's my thoughts on it. I know you've been in the comments. You've been talking about me, telling me about Chris Hilton Jr. That's my take on him. He is definitely one of those guys, if not the guy, that should scare you the most when Clemson faces LSU in week 1 of 2025. All right, coming up next, I'm going to talk to you about Garrett Nussmeier and what he is going to do to attack Clemson, in my opinion. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. And that's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, on drinks, on merch, or even invite more people with you to have a bigger group to come around. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop as you get closer to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and lowest price guaranteed to take the worry out of buying. You know, I'm over here. I'm on location here in Lawrenceville, Georgia. I am not at home, but you know, I'm so close to the Atlanta Braves. My friends in flight school have all gone to see the Braves, and I told them about Gametime, and they got tickets last minute. They were literally sitting at the pool doing something else. So they said, hey, you know what? Braves are playing this weekend. Let's go see them. We've never seen them. So they went to see the Braves using Gametime, had a great time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so I've told you a little bit about Chris Hilton Jr. Everybody's been in the comments talking about it. All my LSU friends out there have been talking about him, and I did ignore him on Friday. But another guy I'm not going to ignore here is Garrett Nussmeier. He is the quarterback. He's the general on the field. He's your opponent against Cade Klubnik. It's Nussmeier. It's Klubnik in a battle for guys who could be in the Heisman Trophy race. in 2025. So Garrett Nussmeier, he's one of those guys that can get to 4,000 yards. He's one of those guys that's going to light you up with touchdowns. He had a great QBR last season. He's positioning himself as the headline quarterback for the SEC. He has a strong, addiction, if you will, to vertical passes, to stretch plays, to get the defense on their heels. He likes to throw sideline to sideline. But his aggression also can come at you and really hurt LSU and the Tigers in their turnovers. And so Tom Allen loves to be aggressive. He loves to get at you in your face. And if you hurry your decisions, as we mentioned in segment 1, if you get into a situation where you're hurrying the quarterback's decision, to me, that's where the chess match is played. You don't allow them to do what they want to do. You hurry their decision to maybe a target that wasn't really their number one, and that could shift momentum and control of who has possession. Now, last year, Nussbus thrives. Again, he's throwing deep. He's throwing to the boundary. He's throwing those fades. If you show him a single high look, he could eat you alive. Now, he's not a guy who, to me, he can run, but I don't think he's going to be running as much as Cade Klubnik. I think Cade Klubnik is going to end up with more rushing yards against LSU than Nussmeier against Clemson. But, he has been working on that. So what I'm hearing from the LSU group is that he's not just, sitting in your pocket. He is going to be used in the run package a little more. Maybe not Cade Klubnik level, but Clemson needs to be careful. If you over pursue to the outside edge, Nussmeier is the type of guy where he could have confidence to step up and go after you. The offensive line, has some guys that they trust. I do still feel like that's their biggest weakness. I feel like that Clemson can take advantage because Clemson's front seven to me is stronger than LSU's the 5 offensive linemen. Even in the tight end there, I think if you had 6 and a chipping running back, 7 on 7, I'm saying Clemson wins that with their defensive line and linebackers versus LSU. LSU is going to want to use their tight end as in the passing game, I think, more. So that's my thing. I feel like the strength versus weakness would be Clemson's line of scrimmage dominance. If they can get there quick enough, that's the matchup that I would put the most pressure on where you have your strengths, force the quarterback into really some kind of trap situations. So Nussmeier is a gunslinger, kind of a lot like what we saw with Cade Klubnik. That mentality could be a blessing for Clemson because if Tom Allen figures out how to properly disguise his coverages efficiently and effectively and, not give them the big chunk plays that are easy, the Clemson Tigers could cash in on a few turnovers. And as we've seen at times with LSU, if they get in this turnover roll with Nussmeier, I don't know if he can climb his way back. Now, he definitely has way more weapons than any of the old film. So I say all that to say, he definitely has more options now than he ever has at LSU. But to me, if you win the turnover battle, you have a much higher chance of winning the game. And Nussmeier is going to give you opportunities. Flip one early. You disrupt LSU's tempo. You force them to play too conservative. And then Clemson's defensive front will continue to snowball. Not only have success, but then to start dictating what the offensive play calls are and what the decisions are made by the quarterback. When you get enough pressure to that point, that's where it really starts to take over in a football game. And maybe you go in with some simulated pressure packages. Tom Allen likes to do some simulated pressure where you're rushing 4, but you're showing 6. You possibly drop a defensive end to stop a hot slant. Brent Venables did that at times as well. And Clemson has athletic defensive ends to do that. Now, I don't want to see Peter Woods 15 yards downfield or TJ Parker 15 yards downfield, but they can escape out and shut off that quick slant pass to the inside. So while Garrett Nussmeier is reading pressure and rockets the ball to someone like a Hilton on a quick slant, he could be getting into a lurking defender who actually was simulating pressure, and his primary goal was to get in on that first read instead of pass rushing. So that could be something that you could go after. Nussmeier, he has 56% completion rate on the deep left sideline compared to 64% on the right side. So that could help you decide how you're going to line up from what side you're going to have. The only problem with using statistics like that, and I love statistics like that, the only problem is, again, his weapons are much different in 2025. Another thing that I have is you could use a lot of spies. I mean, possibly using Wade Woodaz. I mentioned this in Friday's show. Is Wade Woodaz is a taller linebacker. He, to me, would be someone. He's not as agile as some of the nickels and safeties you have, but like a Shelton Lewis or like a Wade Woodaz could really benefit from playing that spy position. And I like Shelton Lewis because there's been a couple of videos out there where Tom Allen has mentioned, and when he's been mic'd up, just how important of a role Lewis is going to be. And I feel like that could be a big play for Clemson in 2025. Now, Garrett Nussmeier's pocket presence is getting better and better and better. But I do think that you can get in and rattle him. I don't think that he is so confident and so good at what he does to not get disrupted with Clemson's front seven. And we know how the Clemson fan base does. They're going to be extremely loud. I would be shocked if there's not a false start, if there's not a timeout that Brian Kelly did not want to take. So all that disruption will just help wear down Nuss as you keep going. Do not let him in stride, with on his back foot, planted properly, throw it with anticipation, because to me, if you let him do that kind of stuff, he has the weapons to really eat you up. Clemson is going to play with, and they typically do play with, a lot of aggression, and that means thin margins, right? You have confidence, you have aggressiveness, you don't want to be reckless. So there's a lot of discipline that is going to be demanded of Tom Allen's unit from week one, which is exciting for me because, man, we don't have to wait at all to get a game like this. This is a playoff caliber game that we are getting week one. And I think that Tom Allen has proven that he can use this defensive philosophy that he's bringing to Clemson to disrupt the best of the best. I mean, he's disrupted some of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, some of the best teams in the Big Ten. He has a blueprint. He has a mindset. He has a strategy to take down even the most dominant teams in the Big Ten. He can do it in the SEC. He can do it against the biggest SEC powers as well, like an LSU. So I have a lot of confidence in what Tom Allen can do, but you have to give, and this is what I'm kind of doing preseason here, is we have to give our respect where respect is due to Garrett Nussmeier and Chris Hilton Jr. and the weapons that LSU has on their offense. All right, I'm going to wrap up the show talking about who must strike first to win the game this August. To me, Clemson's path to victory runs through their defense controlling explosive plays and less about Cade Klubnik. Honestly, I think I would not prefer Cade Klubnik to go into a shootout against LSU. I would much rather see a dominant defense control and limit what the offense can call for LSU and what Garrett Nussmeier can do and what decisions he can make and what timing he has. Now, I do feel like Clemson has a ton of weapons themselves, but can they win a 50-point shootout against LSU? I'm not saying they can't, but I would much rather get back to the defense that we've known from Clemson, that we are expecting from a Tom Allen coach team. Slowing down the game, being dominant at the defensive line of scrimmage, slowing them down and being higher tempo on offense, but slower tempo on defense has really kind of been Dabo's MO. That's his winning formula. 15 years of this, Clemson has had dominant defenses, suffocating front sevens, getting the crowd into it to be the 12th man out there. That identity has to come back at Clemson in 2025. We've had it, but it hasn't been as dominant. And under Tom Allen, that's what we are expecting, is to get back to that national championship level of dominance, to where you can't even think. And when you can think, you've only got 2 seconds to do something about it. That kind of identity I want to see immediately in 2025. Now, last year, Clemson did really well when holding teams. They were like 8-1 when holding teams to 28 points or fewer. But when they got over 28 points, they were 1-4. So LSU under Brian Kelly, even without the weapons that we mentioned, typically score close to 40 points a game. So the Clemson Tiger defense, to me, is the side that will need to set up a masterpiece more than it'll be Cade Klubnik. I think that Cade has weapons that can definitely seal the deal. And I foresee someone like a Tyler Brown re-emerging as a down continuer, as a chain mover that we didn't have, that Clemson didn't have in 2024. If Cade Klubnik can sync up with Tyler Brown and with the electric guys they have to the outside, like a Tristan Smith and Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore and Antonio Williams, Cade has the weapons on wide receiver as well. Does he have the speed like LSU? No, he doesn't. But he has wide receivers that you have to be extremely confident in. So while Cade can score a ton of points, I would much rather Clemson not allow a 38-point game from LSU. I don't want my opponent on week 1 to get close to 40 points, whether you're at home or not. And possibly that could be the only thing. If you did get in a shootout that could hold you and help you, would be that Clemson fan base that could shut down and disrupt and hurt some of the drives that would otherwise be successful for LSU. To me, Clemson's win probability is it's going to be a tough game. I don't like to make predictions. I don't like to guarantee wins or anything like that. I do think Clemson can win this game. I also think LSU can win this game. I believe that the defense is going to have to be disruptive. And as we're continuing to research LSU, my thought process has shifted from shut down the run game to you need to limit the just demoralizing 40-yard pass, 50-yard pass. You need to remove that. That's one of the biggest things. But I don't think you remove it by playing prevent defense and playing soft and allowing free, off the line, wide receivers to get off free, right? So I think what you have to do is you have to be in the backfield with Peter Woods and TJ Parker and even Khalil Barnes and even Will Help. I mean, you have to get in there every single play. These guys have got to be bringing it the entire 60 minutes. So these games where you keep them below a certain threshold of, say, 28 points, I feel much better for Clemson walking away with a W in those scenarios. Clemson has cornerbacks that we trust that are elite. They have Avion Terrell, a little bit undersized, but he's elite. You have Ashton Hampton, who's now a starter and moved in, and he's elite. And if you have Jaden Lucas at fully healthy, I think he can be much better than he did in 2024. So Clemson has some strong cornerbacks that they trust, and Tom Allen will be able to use effectively. So I think that Clemson can be confident on their very far outside guys and extremely confident with their interior pressure to create that chaos. You need to lock down the outside, get them off of their timing. You need to get in with the inside, create the chaos, and speed up their timing so that they can't do things the way they've practiced in practice. And the offense needs to turn around and figure out how to sustain those long drives, but take advantage of any thin margin turnover that kind of defense will give you. If LSU goes out there and scores quick, I think you do have to match it pound for pound. If Clemson comes out, slows them down, I think then that's when Clemson needs to turn around on offense and make an attacking move. You're not going to get a ton of free chances because LSU's offense is very, very strong, as we've been researching so far this year. But is this a national championship type LSU team? I don't know. Are they better than their national championship team that we saw with, Justin Jefferson and Lamar Chase, or not Lamar Chase, but Jamar Chase? Are they better than those and Joe Burrow? I don't know. I don't think so. I think Joe Burrow is much better than Nussmeier, but we don't want him to come. No, we don't want Nussmeier to come to Death Valley and make him look like a Joe Burrow. That's for sure. Hold LSU under 30, disrupt the crap out of them with the crowd, give Cade Klubnik a chance to relax and start clicking. Momentum snowballs, game over, Clemson wins, LSU's on life support, wondering what they're going to do with the rest of their season and how they're going to make up this demoralizing loss. You let some guys like Garrett Nussmeier and Chris Hilton Jr. have all the time in the world, it's going to be a long, long afternoon, an evening at Death Valley. That's for sure. Strike first on the defensive side of the ball, dictate the tempo, force LSU to question what kind of tempo they're going to have, what their timing is going to be. And the more you put them in a situation of not knowing what they need to do to be successful, that's where you're going to win the game. Now, there's a lot to all that I just said, but I know you're excited. I'm excited. I cannot wait. Absolutely one of the best games of the college football season. I know you're tuning in, and thank you so much for tuning into this show. By the way, thank you for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, don't forget to check out the Portal Show with Brian Smith. He has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, and always, Tiger fans, I'll see you in a couple of days, and I'll see you at the top of the hill.